Hi there friends, I'm so sorry I can't be with you in person this morning at Tuggeranong. I've finally had COVID catch up with me and so I'm now in isolation and trying to recover from it, and I'm sure that that's going to happen really soon. But I am very pleased to be able to share with you this morning about the self-denial appeal, something very close to my heart and something that I believe in incredibly strongly. Thought the best way to do that this morning might be to share some stories and to share what God's up to in his world and how we can be part of that, because I think that's so very important. When I was in Papua New Guinea, I went to a corps called Hohola. And Hohola is a great corps. It's vibrant, it's thriving, it's packed out every Sunday, lots and lots of kids and young people. Music is just wonderful. And to be there is something magnificent. I would watch each Sunday morning and a boo-boo would come, and a boo-boo is a grandmother, and the grandmother would bring her little boy. She seemed always like she was incredibly poor. Now, most people in Papua New Guinea are poor, but she would wear thongs and there were lots of sores on her feet, and she would struggle in a little bit and sit with her little guy and often seemed fairly alone. I would always say hello to her and just checked in that she was okay, even though she couldn't speak much English, and I would try my pidgin with her. Then it came to the self-denial appeal, and I was incredibly moved one morning because this boo-boo came, she walked to the front to the basket, and she put in literally her widow's mite. I cried that morning because I thought, here is someone who is the poorest of the poor, coming to give to people that thinks that there are people who are even poorer than she is. And it touched my heart deeply. And I was reminded of the scripture in Luke chapter 2, verses 1 to 4, and it says, as Jesus looked up, he saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. Truly, I tell you, he said, this poor widow has put in more than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. That's a story from Hohola that will never leave me. The widow who brought her mite. I, in Western society, have so much more, and I freely and sacrificially want to give to people who know real poverty. The second story is the faith of some mothers. Now, in Papua New Guinea, every now and then we would take some of the officers out for lunch, and it was quite a treat for them and a treat for us as well. And I knew these ladies fairly well. They're very loyal. They never speak against anything. And one day I said to them, look, I want you to tell me today how you really survive on your officers' amount. Now, in Papua New Guinea, officers get about $50 a week. So that's not much, and especially if you live in Port Moresby and you have to pay some of the prices that in the supermarkets there are higher than our prices here. So I said, no, I want you to really tell me the truth today, because you've got lots of kids, you've got a family, you need to pay for things like electricity and you need to be able to cook. So tell me how it really is. So one of the mothers said, I will tell you, Colonel, because they're always very, very polite. And she said, what happens the first week is we always have some protein, which is usually some chicken. We always have some greens, and never quite sure what that is. And we always, of course, have rice. And she said, we are fine. The first week we are fine. Then she looked down and she became very quiet. And in fact, I could see some tears coming from her eyes. She said, the second week is much harder. Sometimes we don't have a lot, but we believe God. So what we do is we go to our bedroom and pray. Our children, they go to their bedrooms and pray. And we ask God to have someone turn up. And she smiled and she said, and often they do. Our God comes through. Now again, friends, that was another moment when I cried. I thought, oh my goodness, how do these folk look after their children and take care of their families in a place where it is just so very hard to do that. And they said to me, we are fine. We trust God and he comes through. And he did. But how difficult to live that way, knowing that there may not be enough money for the next meal to be provided. Well, they do trust God. They've got nothing, but in another sense, they have everything, because they believe that their God, our God, will come through for them. It's the faith of mothers, isn't it? Psalm 145 verse 4, one generation commends your works to another. They tell of your mighty acts. And so in this time of self-denial, sometimes they did not deny themselves every second week, but they trust God. They believe him. They understand that he is the one who will come through, and they pass that faith from generation to generation. The widow, she brings her mite to give to those poorer than her. The mothers, they teach their children faith, believing that their great God will come through. What faith they have, what joy they have. The third story is from the Solomon Islands, and I got to go there a couple of times. Another beautiful nation, probably not quite so scary as PNG. Now, for a few years, the army sent officers from Papua New Guinea, and then we couldn't find the right person to come, and the Herrings from New Zealand decided that they would go. How I admired them. In their retired years, they'd be going up and down mountainsides to look after people and to really embed the Salvation Army's work in the Solomon Islands. It came time for them to send some cadets to college, and a beautiful young couple came across to PNG to be trained. Now, while they were there, she became quite sick, and we realised that she needed some treatment. Now, this would never happen in Australia. We had to get her into the private hospital, and to get into the private hospital, you have to pay the fees up front, and we didn't have that kind of money in Papua New Guinea. So some of our friends in other countries put into their pockets, they provided the money that she needed for the dialysis that was needed. And then came a time when we had to make a decision, because there was no more money. And literally, we had to send her back to the Solomon Islands, knowing that she would probably die. Now, that broke my heart. For a while, she did really, really well. And then all of a sudden, we got the news that she had passed away. Tragic. Tragic that in a developing nation, there was not enough money. Well, that was a really, really sad time. And lots of us grieved the loss of her and the loss that that meant for her husband as well, who couldn't stay in, who couldn't continue his training. But God always brings good out of bad. Well, often he does. And so I thought of the verses in 1 Corinthians 3, verse 6 to 8. I planted the seed, Apollos watered, but God has been making it grow. So neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. The one who plants and the one who waters have one purpose, and they will each be rewarded according to their own labour. Now, how faithful those cadets were, how faithful the Herrings were, how faithful those officers from Papua New Guinea were. We have new officers there now from the old Australian South, and they are doing beautifully. The work is expanding. New things are opening up. Nothing's ever in vain. And those people who are faithful, we now begin to see more and more fruit, because people put up their hands and said yes to Jesus. The widow, the faithful mother, those who are prepared to go to another nation in order that their nation might benefit, and even lost their lives in the midst of it. When I came back from Papua New Guinea, God said something quite stunning to me. He gave me a picture, and he was standing there, and he said, you know, when you're ready in the West, when you're finished with all of your money and your wise counsellors, your cleverness, all the things that you know how to do, I'm here. Now, I think in the West these days, we're realising we might need him more and more, and we do. But we're still very blessed. We're still very well off. And out of our riches, I would invite us to be incredibly generous. That's just 3 stories I've told you today. I could tell you much, much more. But the widow who gave her mite for someone who was poorer than her will always stir my heart. And I want to invite you over this self-denial period to be stirred, to say, God, I am incredibly rich. I am incredibly rich. I know that. And out of what I have, I will give sacrificially for those who have even greater need than I do. So I want to encourage you, as you've heard these stories over these weeks, to give sacrificially. Can't outgive God. God is so good to us. He blesses us in so many ways. And now we take from what we've been given in order to give back, to bless those who desperately need our help. May God bless you as you do.